Hey, fellow patriots, I'm Bree.
And I'm Blaze. Some call me Pa. It has been said that we have 4 boxes to keep ourselves free. These are the soapbox, the ballot box, the jury box, and the ammo box.
And we are the 4th box. We are here to arm you with enough information, resources, and skills to take back your freedom, increase your self-sufficiency, and inspire you to join in the fight against tyranny.
Thomas Jefferson said, "Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty." Thank you for joining us and for joining in this fight.
Welcome back to the 4th box. Here we are, another week back at the 4th Box podcast. Pops, how are you doing this week? We just got to see each other in person, but always good to catch up here as well.
Yeah, it was a wonderful weekend. The weather was super. Great time spent together. We only missed your brother there with us, but we got a lot accomplished, and we spent a lot of great time together. So still unwinding from that, but ready to carry on with the show tonight. I want to welcome, of course, all of our listeners. I want to send a special greeting out to Aaron, Tegan, and Goldie, who we had the opportunity of meeting over the weekend. They're big fans and listeners. So I want to send a shout out to those guys and everybody else who joins us on a regular basis. In fact, I saw Paul today, one of our big contributors who helps out. Just want to let everybody know we're still here plugging away. There's a lot going on, and we are going to stay in the fight as long as we are able.
Yeah, that's perfect. I'm glad you called those folks out. We certainly appreciate everyone who stayed with us for 80 some weeks now. Hard to believe we've already been doing it that long, but we are not going anywhere. We're going to keep at it as much as we have our fans. We also have our haters, but that comes along with the territory. I think we're no strangers to that. So it's definitely fun to keep at it, and super excited to get to spend time with some of the people that enjoy our show as well. So with that, I'll let you lead into the episode tonight with your toast and all that good stuff.
Sure. So tonight, a little bit unusual, I'm going to toast here our county officials at the Elk County, Pennsylvania officials, that being our commissioners and sheriff and so on. They are on our mailing list, which includes state reps and our U.S. congressmen and even President Trump, whom I write to almost weekly. And I just want to point out that our county level officials are the only ones that have decided not to respond and have blocked emails coming. So I'm sending a toast out to those courageous individuals down at the county courthouse who have found it within their public servant duties that it's appropriate just to block mail from their constituents. None of them have ever asked to come on. None of them have ever challenged, but they simply block newsletters that I send out to state and federal representatives as well as the president, but only here in the county. Our county officials have found it appropriate to block those. Or maybe it's something, maybe there's some kind of contamination, they're worried about. I don't know, but big salute to you guys and your courage down there.
Cheers. Yeah, great. We love to see that.
Yeah. So probably get a little flack over that one. But that's all right.
Yeah, nothing we can't handle.
No, for sure. So our quote tonight: "You will never know how much it has cost my generation to preserve your freedom. I hope you will make good use of it." And that comes from John Adams. So I think that statement, that quote, is very fitting down through all generations. Many, many generations have sacrificed blood and treasure to preserve for us, we the people living here today, our freedom. And it insinuating that it cost them a lot. And that would be, of course, the early days and the founders and during the American Revolution. And most all of those people lost everything in that effort. And all of the service people whether it was a conflict that was just or not in the eyes of our Constitution, they went off believing that they were doing what was necessary and right for this country in an effort to preserve freedom. And I would never, ever slight. I want to hold in our highest regard those people that have done that. And it's up to us to keep this kind of a quote in mind that it cost many generations very, very much in blood and treasure to preserve for us the liberty that we are letting slip through our hands. So we will never stop reminding people that it is up to us to take back what was won by the blood of our forefathers.
Yeah, it's such a powerful quote to think back on. Um, it's amazing how much they did, how much they gave, how much they sacrificed for freedom that, in the grand scheme of things, did not last all that long before it started going back down the other way. And we've just been on a steady decline for decades and decades. And that's where we find ourselves here now, thinking back to those founders and their words and wishing that more people could draw from their bravery, their courage, their willingness to act and sacrifice so much. I mean, nobody's willing to sacrifice anything anymore. And that's why we are where we are. So it's definitely a great quote to start us out for the night.
Yeah. And, one of the things I reflect upon every once in a while, and it comes from Mark Levin, who, in most cases, I can align myself with his support of the Constitution and his, a position on many things. And a long time ago, many years ago, I heard him say, "We have the government that we want." And I thought, the guy's losing his mind. Why would he say that? But then he went on to explain that the majority are happy with the way it is, or it would change. If the majority was not happy, we could fix it. So, like our good friend Paul comes around and he's always troubled by what can we do? What can we do? Nobody's listening. And what I really encourage people to do is enjoy the beautiful day. It's fall, it's early fall here, really still summer, but we're starting to see the leaves come down. The colors are pretty, the sky is blue. Enjoy what is around us every single day. Do not dwell on this. If there is an action that you can do to forward the cause of liberty, by all means do it. Write a letter, talk to a friend, be involved at the precinct level, at the county level, but do not allow it to take your focus off the beauty of the day, your family, all those things that are really important. Because when it's time, I'm sure we're all going to know. We will all know it's time for us to do something. So until that point, make sure you stay active. Make sure you communicate with friends and neighbors. Make sure you get involved at the local precinct. Call and write to your local, state, and county officials, federal officials. Be involved, but do not let this consume your life, because things go by pretty quick and there is a lot of beauty around us. We have family, friends, the beautiful nature. We need to be enjoying these things. But anyway, to go back to Mark Levin saying, we get what we want and this must be what the majority wants. And I think that's largely true. I don't think people focus on the fact that we're all enslaved to a tax system that steals from us and becomes engaged with things that the federal government was never allowed constitutionally to be involved with. We are indoctrinated, dumbed down by an education system that doesn't have the courage to stand up and fight for truth. And I'm talking about the teachers' unions and the big administrators in the Department of Education. We're over medicated, stuffed full of drugs that are very harmful to us, and nobody seems to worry about any of this stuff. Nobody seems to care. We can all go to the football game. We can all go play golf. We can all go to the shopping mall and do these rather frivolous things that really have no impact on how future generations are going to live. So I think, that statement from Mark Levin is basically true. We get what we want, and the majority is perfectly happy being enslaved, feeding the military-industrial complex, keeping us involved with all kind of wars, stealing our wealth from it, and putting it in the pockets of the few. And we tolerate it. So you get what you tolerate, and until there's enough people that are done tolerating it, I think we have to find other places to enjoy. Get involved with prepping, take care of your family, teach old school fundamental things, stay out of this woke crap that they hopefully is fizzling out, and find some satisfaction in the world around you.
Yeah, I think that's great. Obviously, we come on here every week and we have a lot of really crappy stuff to say. But I think people that know us on the outside don't think of us as these people because there's so much to be grateful for. I mean, life is good overall. There's a lot of stuff going on that's bad all the time. That if we're not being in at least somewhat aware of. You don't have to participate. You don't have to start a podcast with your dad, but you have to be like a little bit aware of it. If you're not aware of it, obviously that stuff's going to grow and grow and grow. But at the same time, you can be aware of those things. You can raise your voice about those things. You can write your representatives about those things, and you can still enjoy your life. Like, it's possible to do both. I think people think you can't do both. I think people think you can't be happy and be positive and have any sense of optimism if you're going to even remotely think about the government. And I do get that, but you're absolutely right. You have to be able to do both. You have to be able to live outside of this, what we talk about every week, because it is so overwhelming and it's messy and I mean, it will literally eat you alive if you let it. So thankfully for us, we have, an hour a week where we get to come on and rant about it. And hopefully people can commiserate with us during this 1 hour a week. And then hopefully for the rest of our week, we're just actually enjoying our lives while still being aware of what is going on. So with that, let's just get into some of the stuff that's going on right now. This one is very, very new, hot off the press information. It won't be by the time Thursday rolls around. I suspect we'll have a little bit more info by the time this episode airs, but 33,000 Epstein files have been released to the public by the House Oversight Committee. Not really sure how I feel about this one yet. We've been asking for it. We've been begging for it. Thomas Massey is still pushing for, hey, get it all out there. Why are we even having this conversation? Why are we dribbling it out like in little chunks? Just put it all out there. So we're definitely not at the end of this battle, but this feels like a little bit of a win. That being said, I don't know what's in it. This is brand new information. An hour ago, there's 33,000 pages. I have not had the chance to go through all of them. My suspicion is that much of it is what we already know. My suspicion is that this is a bunch of bureaucratic paperwork that doesn't really give us any interesting information. It's just documentation that's out there, part of the legal process, but doesn't necessarily reveal any big truths. I don't know that, but that's my suspicion. So, what are your
Yeah.
thoughts on all this?
Oh, I think you're probably making a fair assessment of what we can expect. We know from in the past that government at all levels and in all branches is really there to protect the other pieces of government. So as they start rolling things out, I suspect that, as you indicated, there's probably a lot of pages of information that have related to past cases that were brought against Epstein and some of his cohorts. I imagine there's a lot of that stuff, and I suspect, as you probably were alluding to, that it's meant to maybe appease the appetite of the public, which is, largely calling for this. And it's kind of funny now, at the president's office, we heard that we should just let it go. First, we heard it was going to all come out. Then, after several months in office, we heard that we should just let it go. Why are we still talking about it? And now there's a big dump today. And I'm sure there are people sitting around that have the capability of going through this in mass to kind of summarize what largely is being said. But I would not at all be surprised if it is anything but what we just described as government protecting itself. There is likely to be significant redactions if we get to the real heart of the matter. That's what I'm suspicious of, only because we've seen these things happen before, and we've seen significant events. You might have also noted that there was some sort of drug smuggling boat that was apparently taken down by use of military assets, which is, again, to me, this is unconstitutional. If we haven't declared war against a country or against some entity that is warring against us, if that's what they want to call the drug trade, then we do not have constitutional authority just to start blowing boats out of the water. But I suspect there's going to be some other distractions, and that's the only reason I bring that up. There's probably going to be some other things that happen in an effort to wind down this Epstein thing. I just think there's enough pounding of the drums out in the public that they felt like they had to do something. So interested in seeing what's come out by Thursday when our show airs. But I'm a little bit suspicious that it's going to be more protection of one government agency over another.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the good news here is that we had discussed, previous episodes, and just now you brought it up again, that before there was talk that, oh, there are no files, we have nothing. And because of the public outcry, we're getting something. So we can't settle for that. We have to keep up the outrage. People have to keep hounding their state representatives, their state officials, and going after this seriously, because they're gonna, I think, just keep dropping crumbs to keep us going along without getting too angry, without really coming after them, because they know we're not letting this go. So my guess is that they're thinking, hopefully, if they drop enough crumbs, we'll just shut up. But I think this is a good sign. We didn't shut up. We got a little crumb. Let's keep at it. We'll see. Maybe the next crumb will be bigger, but I don't know. I mean, I was telling you this a little bit before the show began. The thing that's interesting about this is that I went to look at these documents, and the way that they release it on the House Oversight Committee's website is, it's a link, right? It just says, click here, and you click here, and it takes you to a Google Drive folder, which is already kind of weird. And then there's all these documents, but they're not documents. They're images. They're images of the document. It's an image of a single page. So there's no real easy way to just compile all of the text and like plug it into a software and break that down into something simple and easy. There's not even really a simple way to read through each one, because you have to look at an image. So there's no way to like really pull the text. It's a mess. I think this is, again, a tool to keep us distracted for the longest amount of time. Obviously, there are people who can break down this type of information into something more digestible, but the fact that they would even release it this way, it's like, it's clearly part of the game. It probably took them longer to format it this way than anything else that they've been claiming has been taking a while on their end. Like, this is probably what's the holdup all along. It makes no sense that anyone would ever release anything in this format that is so out of reach for anyone to like actually gather information from.
It was designed by going to this technique, I suspect, to be burdensome, to be very difficult for somebody to get through. You have to be 100% committed to get through looking at images, that aren't going to be as easy to view as a Word document, etc. So I suspect that that's part of it, that it was designed to be a pain in the ass for people to get a hold of, but it was also designed to say, hey, look here, we brought some stuff out. Everybody should be happy now. We've dumped a big load of information. Go look at it, So I think you're right. I think it's better than nothing, but only time will tell over the next couple of days, and I expect there'll be people that are picking through this stuff rather quickly and making some highlights on some of the more significant things that may not have been public knowledge already, as you suggested. Suspicious that maybe a great deal of it has already, been out. So, it's I think it's a little bit of a win. I think you might have also noted, I don't know if you had it as one of your topics, but in addition to there being a big Epstein dump, there appears to be some change of tenor from the administration. The presidential office appears now to be a little more interested in seeing the CDC results of various testing, related to the COVID vaccine and or the COVID virus itself. So maybe our voices have been at it long enough and loud enough, saying, we were one of the major disappointments in my estimation with the whole Trump administration, and certainly the first term, was that he never really gave any credence to all the voices that were saying, ho, wait a minute, we don't think this thing is properly vetted. We think we're rushing to get stuff out into people. And he was largely in support of that with his Operation Warp Speed. So it does appear to me, at least on the surface, again, maybe it's all theater, and we've talked many times about that, but at least it appears like there's some willingness to ask for supporting documents as to how we got this thing rushed through, and what are all these voices that are suggesting there's a lot of risks that go along with it. There appears to be some willingness to hear those voices.
Yeah, for sure. That was definitely the next thing I wanted to get into. Speaking of things that feels, kind of like a small win. This one actually feels like a big win to me for several reasons. One, you have Trump coming after the CDC, coming after pharmaceutical companies, saying, I need evidence, I need data. You obviously have data. Let's see it. Let's see the efficacy. Let's see the success rates. Like, let's see the safety. Like, let's see the data for all of these things. So that's fantastic. But it feels like, obviously RFK Jr. and the whole Maha movement is really behind this. There have been a lot of big things that have happened, I think, for Bobby the last few months. Just last month in August, there was major federal funding for mRNA vaccine developments. I'm sorry, I skipped a very important word there. Federal funding cuts for mRNA development. So took a huge chunk out of that. People were upset, as we expected they would be. He also is coming after kind of all of the vaccines, including the childhood vaccine schedule, as well as research for future vaccines. So I know one thing that I was pretty upset about early on in this administration was there was discussion of, vaccines to help prevent cancer, which is like absolutely absurd. I could do a whole episode on why that makes no sense and why it's an absolutely insane idea perpetuated by Big Pharma. But before going even into that, Bobby Kennedy is putting his foot down on that stuff now. He has really kind of changed his tune on a lot of stuff that we just talked about a couple episodes ago, where I was like, oh, he's not coming after it. Seems like in the last month, he started really, really coming after it. And of course, the media is painting it as kind of like a divide between RFK Jr. and Trump. Oh, he's going to ruin Trump's legacy, blah, 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 because of Operation Warp Speed, as you'd said. Obviously, people have a lot of different takes on what's really going on there. At the end of the day, I don't care. They are changing so many of the recommendations and even like adding restrictions on the COVID-19 vaccine. Finally, we just talked about this. They're making it like way more difficult to get the COVID-19 vaccine if you don't fall into certain groups, like older than 65 and I think certain health conditions. Like, it's actually going to be difficult for people to get it now. And for me, that is like overwhelmingly amazing news. That's huge. And there's not a lot of discussion about that, obviously, because people are upset as far as, the far left and the mainstream media. But I think big picture, this is a huge step in the right direction.
I think so too. And maybe our early disappointment in nothing happening, maybe really at the federal level and at these big, huge organizations, CDC and National Institute of Health and all of these things, maybe to gather information and to get this all stacked up correctly, maybe it took a long time. We want people of action. We want men and women of action that are going to go in there and just knock the corruption down knock these walls down of all the bullshit that we've had crammed down our throat. And maybe it just does take a lot longer to get to the point where you're ready to roll it out and say, okay, here it is, and we're going to take it down. There was suggestions earlier on in August that there would be things coming out again about the whole vaccine regimen, and I think that was some subcommittee that made that announcement at the House level. So maybe these things have been going on behind the scenes. And maybe it was important that they did it this way. I don't know. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt at this point, that they were arranging the steps that were necessary to take this stuff down and to roll it out to the public. Um, if it doesn't happen, then I guess we're going to have to be suspicious that all the time that was taken was to make sure that the positions were taken to protect those things. So we'll have to see how it all shakes out. I'm going to go along with you on this one at this point to suggest that I still think it's good. It makes us feel good that there is talk about stifling something that many of us thought at the very least they have not vetted these things properly. They have not vetted them as they normally would for a vaccine, but they scared the hell out of everybody and got everybody running out there. Hey, there's still people, and lots of them, and they're not that far from us, that still go along with it. As soon as somebody has a sniffle, they want you to go get tested for COVID. It is absolutely crazy. But there are people that are so bought into the message that they were spoon-fed back in those days that they still can't let it go. So I hope the idea of trickling this thing out, both on the Epstein thing and on the vaccine, the whole vaccine regimen, but a special focus on the COVID thing and all the wrongs that were done. I think many, many of us would be very quick to point out articles written by very notable organizations that are suggesting, as you see coming out of Europe again today, about the turbo cancers in young people that is just spiking off the charts, and they are largely attributing that to COVID vaccine, etc. I think only here in this country are we able to keep the blinders on and keep people buffaloed with the bullshit media, the propaganda arm of the Communist Party, the whole agenda that just keeps blowing sunshine up our backside. But I think people are generally starting to wake up, and I think maybe this rollout that they are using, I'm going to stand in support at this point and say I think it's good. I think we're headed in the right direction and making information available to everybody that should have been made available.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of good stuff that comes from this. It remains to be seen, of course, what's actually going to happen, but this is the best it's looked since 2020. So it's pretty good, I think, at least in this country. Obviously, there's other countries who, they've already said, no, we're done with this. We're not doing any of these vaccines ever again, but we're a little behind the times with that. But it's something. It's good enough for me for right now.
Yeah, it's a step in the right direction. I think it's going to be a long, drawn-out battle. I think Big Pharma's going to throw a lot of weight behind it to try to hold this stuff off and to try to keep themselves clean, and that was certainly part of why I think they were demanding that they were going to be held without liability and that the information was going to take 75 years to come out. I think those were all preemptive steps to keep themselves out of the muck while they come out with the next one. So hopefully we're going to short circuit a lot of that stuff. Hopefully we're going to make available to people information, as we talked, I think, a week or so ago. What we should be pounding on every single day in this country is we did a lot of people harm. If there is anything, and I want to make a side note to that I know that Peter McCullough, let me see if I can find it in my notes. One simple hack to detox from the COVID vaccine. It was found on 100% Fed Up this morning by Noah on the 100% Fed Up. And it was from Dr. Peter McCullough, and it's called the Spike Support Formula. And he has a whole list, many of the list of things that are help you detox. And I would encourage anybody that's considering that to go find this article by Dr. Peter McCullough, who's one of the leading experts on this very subject. And he has a protocol that he is encouraging people get involved with, including dandelion root and a lot of other natural remedies to other problems. And he has this whole concoction. So if you are struggling or want to try and get in front of some of the things that are being talked about as side effects and adverse effects from the COVID vaccine, please take a look at the Dr. McCullough. We could probably post that up on the show notes if anybody needs more.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think there's ever any shame in looking into that for people who may have made a mistake that they regret now. I know there are people who probably don't want to admit that they did the wrong thing before, but if it were me, I know I would have concerns about what comes next for my health. So we will absolutely post that because I think that should be readily available to everyone. If our own government isn't going to put it out there, it's the least we can do.
I think you're right. And I think I would also like to encourage, most of the time that we spend on this podcast, we are bitching about things that they're doing wrong in government. Well, in this case, both the Epstein files and what Bobby Kennedy is getting to roll out here, and is supposed to be more coming through the month of September related to vaccines. I think if you want to do something positive, you could write to the people that were involved in these committees and rolling this information out and say, yeah, this is what we're looking for. At least in this particular instance, we can pat somebody on the back and say, this is a job well done. And we're certainly expecting more of the same in all areas that corruption has had its hands.
Yeah, very true. Very true. That's not something that we say very often, to tell them good job, like we want more of this. But that's a great point. People tend to be more responsive when they're receiving compliments instead of insults. So
Yeah,
can't hurt.
yeah, I think so.
All right, what else do you have to get into?
Well, I did see. I saw a note today. I thought it was really good. It was really good, and I'm taking this verbatim off of this article. It's time to eradicate transgenderism from public life is the name of the article, and I found it on one of the websites that I look at, and for some reason I didn't include it. But anyway, I pulled a statement out of there, and I'm going to read it verbatim because I thought it was absolutely spot on. It says, we don't have to tolerate a demonic ideology that destroys lives, tears families apart, and keeps producing mass shooters. So this is talking about the whole transgenderism thing and how we fell head over heels in the classrooms and the schoolyards and the schoolhouses. This is just insanity. These are adults that are spreading mistruths, and they are promoting what we have determined destroys families, destroys people's personal health, and largely has a contributing factor to these mass shootings. We talked about it last week or a week or so ago about the amount of these folks that are suffering from depression. Many of them are on some kind of drugs to try to manage these things that we know causes other things. There is all kind of bad that comes out of spreading mistruths, and we as adults got to be the adults in the room and say, no, this is all baloney. Shut it down. Let's quit promoting this stuff. Let's quit encouraging this stuff. Let's tell Hollywood that this crap is not able to be shown on daytime television. Shut it off. Choke it out. It's harming society at large, and it's spawning, in many cases, these mass shooters. I thought it was a great observation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's a big topic right now, with everything that's been going on. Unfortunately, there have been so many tragedies that have come out of these situations where you have a transgender kid or someone even a little bit older. And that right there should be enough to tell you, like, statistically speaking, there are not that many transgenders as part of the population. I don't know what that number is. Like, what is the total number of transgenders in this country? What percentage is that? It can't be high, right?
Right.
But then when you look at the number of mass shootings that have gone on and how many of them are transgenders, that in itself should tell you everything you need to know. If you're questioning whether or not there's a link between transgenderism and mental illness, that answers that question pretty objectively without even having to dive into the details of it too deep. So I think that we talked about this 2 weeks ago. This was a big point that we had brought up. This is an ongoing mental health crisis. And the more we perpetuate this woke disease, the greater it grows and the more of a threat that it has on everyone else. It's not something that's an individual issue. Unfortunately, being woke means that ultimately it ends up hurting people around you too. So it really is a disease, and we have to start nipping that at the bud. We have to recognize it for what it is. And I do think, same thing, that we're kind of headed in the right direction there too with this current administration and the steps that they've taken so far. It's not perfect, especially if we look at like the state level, it's not perfect, but I do think from a federal perspective, the current administration is trying to cut the head off the snake here as much as they're able.
Yeah, and this is another one that I think that we at ground level, wherever we are, if we're employers, if we're somehow affiliated with the schoolyard or with young people's sports, we all have an opportunity to call this what it is and to help at ground level to snuff this out. And to all those parents and adults that are in these positions, whether it be again sports or in a schoolyard or as an employer, and you encourage this stuff, you encourage pronouns, right? This is an opportunity that all of us, we don't need the federal or the state government to come in and rescue us. Stand up for truth. Stand up for the foundational principles that made this country great, and that is truth. And pretending that a boy is a girl and a girl is a boy, and vice versa to the point where these children are being mutilated. This is something that we all have an opportunity. Where are the doctors? Say, no, I'm not doing that. Where is your courage? Give up the dollar and stand up for what's right. At some point, we have to take some of these responsibilities of saving this country, saving our families, and saving our communities. That is how we save the country. Don't tolerate bullshit. And that's what this is. Playing along does not fix the problem. Playing along and letting, we talked about a couple weeks ago, where these young men or young boys in some Virginia school district were being penalized because they called out not wanting to be in a locker room where girls were being created the space to come and invade what should be held sacred for the boys, and the girls should have the same held sacred condition over on their side. But no, we're going to meld these lines and somehow pretend that we're the enlightened ones because we really see through that there's more than two genders and boys really can be. No, it's bullshit. Everybody knows it's bullshit. Let's stand up and call it out for what it is. We can help with these sort of things. We don't need the federal government coming out with some kind of an administrative executive order so that girls don't play in boys' sports or boys and girls' sports. We don't need that. We can fix that at ground level, and that's what we need to be doing instead of turning a blind eye and letting somebody else worry about it. We all have an opportunity to call these wrongs out.
Yeah, I absolutely. I think the thing that is tough, and we've talked about this with several different conversations, not just this one, is that people feel like they're the minority because the mainstream media has the opposite tone with all of these conversations. But the mainstream media is such a small percentage. We've seen the way it's dying. We've seen the way these shows are getting canceled. There's no funding left. Like, the mainstream media might have the biggest platform, but they are the minority. And if you are someone who is in, your school district or something facing these issues, you probably just need to be the one to speak up, and you'll be amazed at how many people rally behind you, because the issue isn't that mindset is lacking. It's that the courage to just speak up about it is lacking. I think, I don't even think, I know, like, for sure that most people agree with what we're saying here now. I mean, that's why we are seeing this shift, just because of who we put in the presidency, right? Like, if it were something that really the general populace felt and agreed with, it wouldn't change based on who the president was, but instead, so many people were kept quiet, canceled, silenced, because of who was in charge and the incredible shift to these ideologies. But now that we're out of that, you're seeing all of these things slowly start to fade away. So if there are people who are still even dealing with these situations, you're absolutely right. These are things that can be fought at the ground level. And we shouldn't even be needing a hand from anybody else. But just know that if you are in that situation, you are absolutely not going to be the minority. Like, there's just no way. I mean, people have somehow woken up to this after 4 years of a disturbing, sick mind virus that we were attacked by. But I think many of us made it out alive, and most of us realize what truth actually is.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I think we've highlighted it a couple of times over recent episodes about sticking to the truth. And I think it goes back as far as every now and then you see somebody on the streets of New York or Chicago or Houston or one of these major cities, Atlanta, Baltimore, getting beat up, getting mugged, getting drug into an alley, and people walking by without taking a corrective step to end what is obviously a wrong. We have to stand up. We all have to take an active part. If we want this country to be a better place to live, if we want this country to be a better place for our children and our grandchildren and generations beyond, we have to take an active part in it. We cannot be some of the ones that walk by and just pretend that you didn't see what was going on when somebody's getting mugged or raped or whatever out on the street, or you hear somebody spreading this lunacy about transgenderism and all the rest of it. Stand up and speak out. Being standing on truth is never wrong. It doesn't care. It does not matter if everybody else in the vicinity is going the other way. Have the courage to stand up and fight back, push back against these idiotic things that we have allowed to permeate society and affect every single one of us. We have the ability to snuff it out, just like we do to change government. We have that ability. We have to stand up. Believe it, folks. It is not a Republican Democrat thing. The only way we change this is get past that dynamic. The only reason it continues is we keep pretending that, oh, just some more Republicans will fix it, or the other side, oh, just a couple more Democrats. They're all in the same team. They've been raping and pillaging and plundering the American people for 150 years. And until we get our head out of the sand and recognize it for what it is, it's wrong. They are universally stealing from us, stealing our children's inheritance from us, funding wars, enslaving us to a tax system and insurmountable debt. These are things that have to be changed at the ground level. There is no knight in shining armor. We all have to be participants if we want this situation to change.
Yeah, exactly. I do want to shift gears a little bit just based on some of the stuff that you said. Kind of made me think about some of the stuff that is going on in some of our cities. Um, Obviously, immigration, this is another big one. Kind of a lot of things we're talking about are things that have been big threats to this country, and the way that we're seeing these things shift. This has kind of been the outline of the episode tonight, even if by accident. We have had several threats. The whole Epstein list thing, obviously, that's a big threat if you're paying attention to what's going on there. The COVID stuff, the transgenderism stuff, and we're starting to see a change. And you might have seen the mayor in Chicago is basically calling for a rebellion against the federal troops that are going to be sent in to help with the immigration issue. Um, Trying to put in place some sort of executive order in the state of Chicago, or I'm sorry, in the city of Chicago, that will, basically attempt to override the federal troops coming in to remove illegal immigrants from the city, which he's claiming, they have a constitutional right to be here. And again, this is where we see one of those mistruths being perpetuated by the media and by so many people who are infected with the woke mind virus. They really believe that people from all around the globe have a constitutional right to be here because CNN and MSNBC and USA Today told them that they did, and that's simply false. And we can get into all of the reasons why nobody should want these people here illegally, because there's a lot of threats that come along with it. But that's not even the point. The point is much simpler than that. The point is that these mayors from all these different cities around the country can't come in and say, the president is acting outside of his constitutional bounds by coming in here. We've discussed this how many times on these episodes. That's simply not true. That's one of the things that he can and should be doing. And it's one of the things that we all voted for him to do.
100%. As we talked in the past, this is one of the constitutionally authorized duties at the federal level, and that's to maintain a uniform code of naturalization and sound borders. There is not a country if you don't have borders. And why is it the people that tell us we should be letting thugs and drugs stream into this country are the people that are living behind walls with armed men? It's our Congress people that are hiding behind barricades with armed men on them instead of being an open house to the public like it's supposed to be. And in their private domains, they are provided security, and all of the rich bitch Hollywood types and all the rest of it are all living in guarded compounds, but they tell us that we're supposed to let people stream into our neighborhoods, bringing thugs and drugs in and destroying our families and our community. When are we going to wake up and say, how can you people be so hypocritical that you hide behind a wall while you tell us out here in the country that we're just supposed to tolerate it? It is absolute insanity, but as you pointed out, you got your firm believers that are watching mainstream media of all stripes, much of the press media, is promoting the agenda at the behest of those people that want to destroy this place and enslave the rest of us. We wouldn't have created a huge demographic of freeloaders, and we're going to bring a whole bunch more in to more largely expand that group of freeloaders by giving free things out so that the dynamic can never be changed. We, the folks that are left here working, paying for this, are the enslaved today. You were put here by Republicans and Democrats alike. Wake the hell up, people. We are being enslaved by our own taxes that we are funding this enslavement with, and the news media that carries the water for this agenda. Cannot you see that they are all working in concert to keep us, now the minority? Guess what? The republic is set up to protect the minority. That's why we were never supposed to be a democracy. Democracy is mob rule. Two wolves and a sheep deciding what to have for dinner. Guess what? We're the sheep. We're the ones carrying the load. We cannot fix it at the ballot box. That is why we were never, ever, ever intended to be a democracy. It was never intended to be mob rule. And you folks that are going along with this because somebody somehow made you feel like you're taking the moral high ground, you need to think through this. What are you putting your children into? You are putting them into a society where they are going to be working for the benefit of those that don't for the rest of their life. That's what they're going to be doing. Why would you do that? Wake up.
Yeah. Yeah, awesome points. Another thing that kind of popped into my head while you were talking here, and this isn't super new. This has been going on for a couple weeks. I'm not sure if it's something you would have seen, but you kind of talked about, all these people sitting in the comfort of their very well-guarded, well-protected homes, up on their high hills where they're safe and they don't care about the rest of us, including those in Hollywood. But you might have seen Spencer Pratt. Have you heard about any of this?
I don't think so.
So Spencer Pratt was a guy who was on like a reality TV show when I was probably in middle school.
Okay.
He and his wife, have kind of remained like celebrities, but I don't really know what they do, if anything, anymore. But they live, in the area where there was the Palisades fire. Still definitely like famous enough that you wouldn't think that they would take such a hard stance against somebody like Gavin Newsom, but they have pretty much made it their life's mission. Every day they are speaking out in complete and total opposition of what's been going on in California and all of the corruption that was kind of surrounding everything that happened before, during, and after the Palisades fire. There was legislation that came out that basically was saying, oh, yeah, we're just going to fill this space with low income housing.
Yep.
And these are people who, certainly have the means to just walk away, but they are not. Have spent literally every day talking about this, coming after Gavin Newsom, coming after his staff, and they're getting shit on, by the media, by everyone in California.
Of course.
But I have a lot of respect for them because people like us, right? The regular people who don't have a huge soapbox to stand on, who aren't in this like inner circle, need more people in that space, in that sphere, that Hollywood sphere, to be willing to talk like these guys are talking, because they have had enough and they're putting their foot down and they don't care who comes after them. And you look at people like in our circle and they're afraid to speak out to their own friend groups. It's like, you have to, this goes back, and this is insane to even say, like, this is the level of sacrifice that our founding fathers were talking about. But it kind of is. Like, you have to be willing to sacrifice everything and you have to have the courage to do it. And I never thought somebody would, from some stupid MTV reality TV show, would be the one that was setting the example. But honestly, he is. They are. It's great to have someone like that who's not afraid to back down, because that's what more of us need to be doing, no matter what it costs. And so it's kind of a silly story, but I really like seeing what's happening there because it's great motivation.
I think it dovetails nicely into one of the previous remarks we were making just moments ago, that we all have to stand up and we all have to take a stand. When you see something that you know is wrong, don't turn a blind eye. Don't pretend you don't see it. Speak out. Just like Seth Dillon said, we have to stop worrying about what freedom is going to cost us. We have to recognize that on this earth, until we are celebrating our eternal reward in salvation, with our eternal self on this earth, one of the very, very few blessings should be held in very high regard is your own freedom. And we have to quit worrying about what it might cost us to preserve that. So when these folks like this guy, and I don't know him, but it's a great story and it's a great example for all of us. Stand up, speak out, make a stand against these mistruths and other issues that pop up that we know are wrong. Transgenderism, boys playing in girls' sports. Everybody knows this is wrong. Just stand up and call it out. That is the beginning of fixing the problem.
Yep, for sure. And you talked a little bit about some Christianity there for a moment. And so I wanted to say, I saw somebody recently post, tolerance is not a Christian virtue. And I think people forget that. I think people in their faith become weak when really it should empower you. And there is so much in there that says we're not going to stand for the shit that we're seeing now. And you have to stand up and do something about it. You have to take action. That's part of your responsibility as a Christian. That's part of your job here, to help usher in truth, not sit quietly by while mistruths and complete and total lies absolutely sweep the nation and the globe. That is cowardice. And in the Bible itself, that is a sin. That is a no-no. And there's a lot of cowards running around thinking that they're doing the right thing and being virtuous.
That's exactly what it is. Without question, it's cowardice, and somehow they want to pretend that they're taking the moral high ground by being inclusive. You are being inclusive to a lie. Remember, the evil one is here to cheat, steal, and destroy. That's what he is. He's here. He's a liar. Everything that he, and why would you promote the lie? You have an opportunity. That is not true. We're not standing for it here. That's all you got to say. And if all of us stood up and say it, guess what? this crap would all be over. It just takes courage. It takes don't turn a blind eye to it. Stand up, speak out. That is how we preserve. That is how we carry the torch forward that was presented to us. The blessings of this country was presented to us. We've let it slip away. My generation, I'm calling you out. My generation is a large piece of the cowardice that has gone on and allowed this place to go into the toilet. We have an opportunity to inspire young people and to stay involved and speak out every opportunity we have to turn back these mistruths.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So I've got one last thing that I personally wanted to touch on. If you've got anything else, we can jump into that too. But the last thing that I wanted to touch on here, it ties a little bit into the illegal immigrant thing we were talking about before, and it certainly falls in this realm of current threats to this country. So this is kind of a twofold thing because they don't necessarily come as a package when you're looking for the news headlines, right? But I think it's important to think about them at the same time. One of them, and this isn't brand new information, but I want to bring it up now because I feel that it's relevant, is that birth rates are at an all-time low in this country. All-time record-breaking low. That is a fact. Look it up on any website. Look it up on the government websites. They're going to tell you the same thing. Look it up on the CDC. All-time low. Why does this correlate to illegal immigration? Because one of the major threats to this country is how the sheer mass amount of people who are not Americans pouring in while there are not any new Americans being born. So we are literally being conquered without a war ever having to take place. And to prove how true and accurate this is, I mean, look at any city. Go on Google Maps in any city and look up how many Islamic mosques there are in that city. It is beyond disturbing. And just recently, Minneapolis becomes the first major U.S. city to broadcast the Islamic call to prayer 5 times a day. That is, I know it's Minneapolis. I know it's a shithole, but that is so beyond disturbing to me that that's where we're at. Like, we are being overrun. We're being completely taken over. We're already compromised by a force that's greater than us, and they will never have to pull a trigger. It won't be, we talk about these sleeper cells that we were worried about and all of these things. That won't have to happen because there are less of us. Or I should say, there is becoming less of us while their numbers are rising. And yeah, sure, Trump's going after immigration, but it's not really solving the problem with how many people are already here and how few of us are being born. And for those of us who are, so many of the values have already been completely derailed. So we've talked many times, many people before us have talked many times about how this country will really die from within. It will eat itself alive. It won't need to be conquered. And this is another example of how that's kind of happening already, just based on the sheer numbers of the birth rates and the people who are coming into this country with different ideologies, people who want completely different things for this country than what we want. People who do not care about freedom, people who do not care about your rights. You want to talk about LGBTQ and transgender this and transgender that. I assure you, the people who want to bring Sharia law into this country and every other country of the West do not care about those things or just about anything else.
No, they don't. And if you think about it, it's really being done with some strategic planning involved. You take a place like Minneapolis now, you're going to that state is controlled by the politics of Minneapolis, just like Pennsylvania is by the politics of Philly, Maryland is by the politics of Baltimore, New York by New York. So they go into an area and they take over local politics. Pretty soon they run the politics in a major city that largely has an influence over the whole state population. So now you take this state that may have been starting to lean purple in terms of its values, leaning a little bit more conservative, and and most of the influence comes from the population centers, as some of the state mentioned, Chicago, even Texas, California, certainly these Georgia, these states that are being affected by the population centers politics. You see, that's where these things are taking shape. I would add a side note to that Mamdani up there in New York City is largely predicted to be the winner ahead of time. Of course he is, because it's a Democrat and they're going to vote for the Democrat. They don't even understand that he's an avowed socialist. And amongst other things, there's a lot of very, very bad policy things that you can find out about this guy, but he will be voted in because, hey, I vote Democrat. I'm a liberal thinking person. I vote Democrat, and they're going to go down and pull a handle, and they're going to put an avowed socialist in New York City to further contaminate the overall political landscape in New York City, just like Chicago does in Illinois and Baltimore and Maryland and all these other. So we are seeing these strategic moves take place in large cities that control a significant state, an important state. Pennsylvania is certainly one of them, where many presidential elections in the past have hinged on Pennsylvania. So you can see these things taking shape, as well as in New York City, with them now predicting ahead of time, way ahead of time, that Mamdani is going to most likely be the upcoming mayor in New York City, an avowed socialist, but that's what we're going to vote for. So to your point, the city, the country is being pecked apart. We've talked about it many times. Thugs and drugs streaming across the border, influencing politics in these major cities. The whole thing you brought up about Minneapolis, the Somali community up there is very, very large, very outspoken, very active, very much in the middle of all the stuff that went on up there during the BLM riots and all the rest of it. And we are watching ourselves decay from the inside out, and we are too busy paying attention to other things. Only we can save this stuff, and it's acknowledging what you just pointed out. We have to be bringing children forth into this world if we want things to remain like we had them and get better instead of declining into this third world country. So we got to stand up and be an active participant. We can't sit back on the couch anymore and expect somebody else to fix this problem.
Yeah, for sure. So these are the things that we're facing today, and it will be something else tomorrow and something the day after that. And the thing about all of these issues is that the powers that be, those who are truly pulling the strings, the global cabal, as we like to so often say, they always have a backup plan. You better believe if we foil one, they'll come in with another. That's what we see time and time again. We sit here and we talk about problems. We talked about problems a year ago, and I didn't think that we would be talking about these problems today. And in another year, we'll have a new set of problems, and it won't stop. The only thing we can do is keep praying for more people to become aware, to wake up to what is going on, and in any way at all, take some action to thwart the evil that is at hand. It does not have to be a big thing. If every single person is doing one small thing, then we're going to be all right. So, whatever it is for you, if it's sharing this episode or if it's finding a totally different podcast who is still very relevant and sharing that episode, if it's sharing a news article, you don't even have to share your own voice. You can share other people's. There's plenty out there. There are a lot of people who are trying to wake people up to this because it's what needs to happen. It is the answer. And you said it earlier in the show, there's a lot of good left in the world, and I still am so optimistic because of those things that I really believe somehow we're going to pull this out. We're going to see it through, and I don't know how yet, but I feel good that one way or another we will get past all these things and it'll be all right. It'll be all right.
It will be all right. And I'm going to bring up one other point that I did slip past that I wanted to talk about, and maybe it'll cue up some of the discussion for next week. And this article was artificial intelligence has already taken over. Most simply have not noticed it yet. And that came off the America First report. If anybody has a little time and want to look it up, I found it to be very interesting. But we're going to wrap it up tonight. I thought it was a great show. Looking forward to next week. Of course, I'm going to be in Alaska, so I'm not sure how we're going to patch that together. may or may not be on. You might be doing a show with somebody else. We'll see what we can put together. Very much
Yeah.
looking forward to my time up in Alaska and see your brother, my son. It's going to be great. But the last point I wanted to make is remember, we've talked about it many times. This battle comes down to good versus evil. All of the points we talked about tonight basically can be broken down into very fundamental things. This is good versus evil. And with that, I'm going to add my Bible verse for tonight to tie that together. But always remember these things. It's good versus evil. There's no gray area here on all of these things. Boys can't be girls. I'm sorry, folks. Who's ever got caught up in that and went along with it, it can't be so. Just call it out for what it is. This is good versus evil. So if the Bible verse tonight, therefore, do not throw away your confidence, which has a great reward, for you have need of endurance, so that when you have done the will of God, you may receive what was promised. And that comes from Hebrew chapter 10, verses 35 and 36.
Perfect. Great way to close us out, Pops.
All right. Well, always good to see you, Bree. That hour went by pretty quick. They usually do. And we'll have to get together on our plan for next week.
Yep, we'll figure it out one way or another. We will be here. Might be just me, might be both of us, might be somebody else. We never know, but we'll certainly be here every week, Thursday, 6 p.m. Don't forget to give us a like, a review, a rating, depending on what you're listening on. Subscribe, share, all that good stuff. It really does help us out a lot. So until next week, guys.
Stay vigilant.
Thank you so much for listening. We really do appreciate the support and truly love getting to share this message with anyone who wants or needs it. The best way for you to support the show is to subscribe, add a rating, and share with everyone you know. You can find us on Instagram, X, and at thefourthbox.com. We'll see you next Thursday at 6 p.m. Stay vigilant.